welcome to Minimal Mindful Mama. For a long time, I thought, as I think that probably a lot of Americans do, that most of the things that we purchase are made by machine. I imagined factories with all these huge, amazing machines that could just produce on a mass scale all of the products that we buy and use in our daily lives. However, a few years ago, I learned that this actually wasn't necessarily the case. So today I want to talk a little bit about being mindful with our purchases and some of the things that I've learned along the way. To use clothing as an example, I always imagined that there were factories that produced and made all of the clothing that we commonly see in stores like Walmart or Amazon or anywhere that you would typically purchase inexpensive clothing. After all, in school we learn about the Industrial Revolution, and we've come so far with inventions and what we're capable of doing that whenever I bought something that was fast fashion, I just imagined that robots somewhere had made these pieces of clothing very quickly and inexpensively on a large scale. But it turns out that while we do have machines that can do parts of the process of making clothing, such as cutting the fabric, it's actually been a lot more difficult than you would imagine to make a machine that can sew the clothing together. There are some companies that are pioneering this, but essentially what it comes down to is that a machine can only do one kind of fabric. And so you can't use the same machine to switch from a t-shirt to, say, jeans as easily as a human would be able to switch over on a sewing machine. There's also variances within the same kinds of fabric. And so it's been difficult to come up with a machine that can actually sew a bunch of t-shirts that are all the same very well. This in itself was very surprising to me. And then there's an additional factor that these machines require upkeep and maintenance. And because of the way that different jobs are valued, hiring someone who is capable of upkeeping these giant machines is actually a lot more expensive than hiring a person to actually sew the t-shirt in the first place. Here's where it starts to get even more complex. In the United States, people expect to make a certain wage. And so in order to mass produce things cheaply, oftentimes companies outsource to other developing countries where they can pay people less than what they would have to pay someone with the same skill set that lives in the United States. Companies are able to drastically reduce costs by paying people who are already living in poverty in developing countries far less than what they can actually live on or what they deserve. Therefore, it's much more cost effective for these companies to continue paying a woman in a third world country hardly anything a day than it is to actually put the time and money and effort into developing the machines that could actually produce things the way I, in my mind, always imagined that factories made clothing. In addition to this, which could be considered morally gray at best, the United States has recently imposed a ban on imports coming from a certain district in China where it is well documented that slave and prison labor is being used to produce items very quickly and cheaply. After all, if you are using slave labor, then you don't have to pay them at all, and therefore you can really cut costs. This prison district is internationally known to have horrible conditions, and therefore the United States has a ban on imports that are coming from there. Companies like Amazon, Nike, Abercrombie & Fitch, and a lot of other big names have been tied to getting their products from this district. But there's a loophole, and that's what enables companies like these and such as Temu, which I'm sure many of you have seen ads for recently, are able to continue importing their products. As long as a shipment is under $800 in worth, it's able to get through customs. Therefore, they're able to split up their shipments into smaller quantities, avoiding the United States ban on importing these slave-made goods. In Googling this, I was amazed at how many news articles there actually are on this topic. Fast fashion is well known to have a lot of ethical issues, not even to mention the sustainability issues. What I think it really comes down to is a lack of awareness among consumers. I think the average American, probably as a result of our grandparents going through the Great Depression, see a good deal and get very excited. Many of us have been raised to value frugality and saving money. And so we see something that looks really cheap or that is appearing to be a good deal. We either don't think about it at all, or we imagine that high-tech factory that doesn't exist. And so through our own personal lack of awareness, we're actually supporting slavery and forced labor and enabling it to continue through our contentedness to remain ignorant. So having learned all of this over the last few years, when I first saw an ad for Temu pop up, it made me feel very wary of the company, because I now know that products can't be made that cheaply and the companies still make a profit. And so I didn't want to shop with them until I did more research and discovered what their practices were like. With a t-shirt, for example, you have to take into account the cost of the fabric being made, fabric being dyed, or whatever kind of design is put on it, and then the wage of the seamstress who made that t-shirt. And yes, there are things such as overstock or clearance where companies will take a loss in order to clear out some product. But in general, be mindful, and when you're purchasing something, think about if you couldn't personally make this product for the cost that it's being sold to you for, how big is that disparity? Of course, time is valuable and there's nothing wrong with outsourcing to other people, but if a t-shirt is only costing $3, $4, $5, think about how many of those it's likely that a person could sew in an hour, and what that wage might work out to look like for the company to still be making a profit. So here are some of the ways that I've changed my shopping habits in order to be more mindful with my purchases, because now that I'm aware of some of these unethical practices, I don't feel like I can be excited or brag about this dress that I bought off Amazon when I know that it's highly likely tied to slave labor and I don't support slavery. The first thing I do is simply be more mindful and shop less. Minimalism has helped with this, but I also try to look for pieces that I know I will rewear, or things that I know I'll use multiple times. This way I'm able to shop less and I'm able to own less and organize more quickly, and the product is worth more to me because of the amount of times that I'll end up using it. A second thing that I've done is look for fair trade stickers or labels on items that I'm purchasing. A fair trade certification means that a farm or company has been vetted thoroughly to make sure that everyone is being paid a living wage along the entire line of production. While fair trade items do tend to be slightly more expensive, for certain items I would rather pay a little bit more to ensure that everyone has received a living wage. Again, especially if it's something that I'm going to have for a long time and use a lot. And thirdly, I enjoy shopping secondhand or used or gifted items. Not only is it more sustainable because you're giving those items a second life, but you can also save money or oftentimes find things free. And you're also preventing your money from going to support these companies that are using slave labor. I'd love to hear in the comments down below if any of this information was surprising to you, or what steps you've taken in your own life to be more mindful with your shopping habits. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.